Welcome. Welcome back to my garden and the Garden to Grub series. And today we're down in the garden. We're not going to be down here very long. We got storms rolling in and they're calling for some pretty heavy rains today. But I wanted to come down to the garden and grab what I need for what I want to cook up today for our Garden to Grub series. And so what we're going to be making today is we're going to be making, I'm not exactly sure what to call it. It's like a roasted sausage, potato, squash, green bean mix that I like to put together, put in the oven, and it always tastes good. So what we do here in the Garden to Grub series, we just do things that's how they've been doing them for hundreds of years. Just walk down to the garden, grab what you need, go up in the kitchen, cook it up. So for this series, for the sausage, roasted sausage and potatoes and everything else that we need some peppers. We're going to need some squash. My potatoes aren't ready yet, so I won't be using those. I have some potatoes that I got locally. So let me go ahead and we'll grab some squash, we'll grab some peppers, head back up in the kitchen, and we'll get cooking. So I'm down here in my yellow squash patch and going to pick a couple yellow squash, and I can hear the bees humming, and that's a good sign, just to make sure that they keep producing my yellow squash down here. So let me take a quick look, see if I can find, I don't need a couple. For today, if I see anything that's too big, of course, I'm going to pull it so it doesn't get way too big. But let me take a look around here and see what I can find to take up to the kitchen. So that'll do it for our squash, and that's plenty for what I'm going to make. So let's head up and we'll grab some peppers. So here's where my peppers are, and like I said, I didn't plant a whole lot of peppers this year. I only planted about 10 plants, so I don't got a whole lot of peppers growing, but got plenty for me. I'm here by myself, so I don't have to cook that much food. So see what we find. He's small, but he'll do. Now there's loads of peppers growing on this guy. So you can see those two, those are real nice peppers. It'll be perfect for what I'm going to be making today. So I just finished picking all the items that I need for today's recipe, our Garden to Grub recipe. And as always, when you're down in the garden, you find a lot more than what you're actually needing at the time, which is great because you can always give them to neighbors and give them to friends, or freeze them, or if you're canning them. But I came down today to get my squash and my peppers and cucumbers and a couple tomatoes, and the tomatoes are doing extremely well right now. I got a load of tomatoes that I just picked. So beautiful little better boys. So just a great harvest. And you know, it's one of the nice things about having a garden. And as I mentioned before, when you're down here in the garden, always different thoughts come to mind. And one of the thoughts that came to mind were the victory gardens of yesteryear. I remember reading for quite a while back in, I guess, World War I, World War II, that people had victory gardens, whereas they would plant all kinds of vegetables and things for themselves to try to be as independent as possible. So the resources that were outside of that could be used for war. You know, thankfully, we're not using resources so much for war as we did back then, although there's still a lot of stuff going on. But I think of this as my victory garden because I can come down here and instead of having to run out to the grocery store and picking up this or that, not knowing where it came from, not knowing what they spray on it, the chemicals or whatever it may be, I come down here to the garden and I know everything's organic. I know what kind of fertilizer I use. I know there's no pesticides or anything else on these vegetables. And there's nothing fresher than picking them and then just walking up and using them right away. So they're as fresh can be. So you can't get any fresher than what I have here. So to me, that's my victory for today. Freshness, no pesticides, no chemicals. It's just as fresh can be. And pick it, walk up 50 yards to the kitchen, and then I make it. So to me, that's the victory. So let's head up to the kitchen and we'll get going. we're back in the kitchen now, and it's time to start cooking up our roasted sausage and vegetables. And you can see a little bit of hesitation now as I try to describe what I'm going to be making. The reason being, for hundreds of years in Appalachia and in the South and other areas of the U.S., is that really what you made depended on what you had. And here for this recipe, this is roasted sausage, and then we're going to add vegetables. But those vegetables varied from time to time depending on what was available. So I can just tell you, for this recipe today, I have I'm going to be roasting sausage, and then for the vegetables, I have my sweet peppers, I have potatoes that I got locally, I have my squash, my yellow squash that I'll be putting in, and then I have green beans that actually aren't from this year but are from last year that I'm going to be throwing in. And that's what I'm going to be putting together. If you ask me in a few months what I'd be putting together for the same dish, it may vary. So that's the important thing with this dish, is that there is no set recipe. It varies depending on what you have. 100 or 200 years ago, you didn't just go down to the grocery store with your list and your recipe and just pick out what you wanted. You went and you saw what you had in the cupboard, you looked at what you had in the garden, you looked at maybe what other people you had traded with in other farms nearby, and that's what determined what your dish was going to be. I just want to share that because if you're looking for a strict recipe, I don't have one, because this varies from day to day, and that's just historically, that's how this recipe always was. So as we put this recipe together, we have to realize that different things take different amount of times to cook. So the first thing I'm actually going to put into the pan, into the oven, is my potatoes, because potatoes take the longest amount of time to cook. And so what I'm going to do now is grab the potatoes and we'll cut them up, and we're going to put them in the pan, put them in the oven, and as they're cooking for about 10 minutes or so, we're going to start prepping the other vegetables. Now the potatoes that I'm using, they're small potatoes. I love the little potatoes. I don't know what it is. I think they just taste a lot better. That's what I'm growing. I'm going to be pulling mine out pretty soon out of my garden because I like the small size. But the ones I have right now is that even though they're smaller, they're going to cook quicker, but the larger ones I'm still going to cut in half. So let me just get something to rinse them off. I've cleaned them earlier, but and I like the different colors potatoes, the purple, red, and just regular yellow potatoes. So these are the ones that I'm going to be using, and I don't know if you can really see that. But what I'm going to do, these are the potatoes. This might be a few too many for what I'm going to be making. I've said before, I cook for one person, and when you look at my recipe, I mean, of course, I eat it now, and I have leftovers, and I'm looking forward to the leftovers from this. But if you have a large family, 5-7 people, you need to adjust it accordingly. So I have my potatoes. I'm just going to rinse them off real quick. But you can do this with the larger potatoes, but for what I like, you know, this is probably the largest that I have here. I love the smaller potatoes. I just think they taste a lot better. So we're going to go ahead and start cutting them because we're going to get them roasted first. So here's a pan. I'm going to use olive oil today as I roast these. But what I'm going to do is when I cut all these items together, I like to have everything in bite-sized portions, and that helps things to cook better. And I just think it works better because if you have smaller pieces of your squash and your peppers, they don't cook evenly. So I try to make everything about the same size. So even with these smaller potatoes, you're going to see there's quite a size difference here. Now that one's pretty small, so I'm going to leave him whole. But as I said, the potatoes take the longest to cook just because they're potatoes. And so I'm going to cut them up and I'm going to cook them first. And as they're cooking, the rest of the vegetables, I'm going to cut up and get them prepped so that once these are cooked, and not fully cooked, but about 10-15 minutes, then I'll be able to add the rest of the vegetables. So you can see here pretty much what I did. Actually, that one I'm going to probably cut again, just a little bit smaller there. So you can see what I did there, and I'm going to put just a little bit of olive oil. Of course, back in Appalachian days, 100, 200 years ago, they didn't have olive oil. They would use a different type of oil on this, but just because that's what I use, that's what I'm going to put on there. So the next step is I'm just going to get a spoon and mix it up. Get that olive oil all over it so it'll help the potatoes to cook well. And let me get my pan that I'm going to be putting in the oven to roast everything. So I'm just going to take my pan here. And so you can just see I got my potatoes here. I'm going to put them in the oven. I'm going to let them start cooking. I'll set my timer for about 10-15 minutes. And then as they're cooking, I'm going to get the rest of the vegetables ready. So as the potatoes are in the oven and they're just getting a head start, I'm going to start pulling out the rest of the vegetables that we'll be putting in this dish that we're working on. And we have some sweet peppers that we'll be putting in, and then also yellow squash. So let me start with the yellow squash. And I have some that you saw as we went down to the garden this morning. And I'm just going to grab 2 of these and just clean them off. And it's going to be the same thing that we did earlier, where we're just going to cut them up. And again, I try to keep them in kind of bite-sized portions, because if they're too big, then they don't cook properly. So trying to keep everything about the same size. So let me go ahead and I'm going to cut these squash. Oh, that one ran away. I always have a couple of squash trying to run away. But I'm going to keep these squash here in about a size that would be appropriate for bite size. If they get too big, then they don't cook as well. Now for this, when it gets bigger here at the end, I'm going to actually cut it in half, and I'm going to slice it this way. But you can see all the squash that I'm doing here. I'm trying to keep it pretty uniform size-wise, so that when I cook it up, it all cooks pretty evenly. So let's put these in the pan. And we'll cut the next one. Yeah, one of the nice things about doing it this way, like I said, there's nothing like being able just to walk down to the garden. And I mean, these squash that I'm cutting up right now, I picked them this morning. So when you talk about fresh vegetables, you can't get any fresher than that. And that's one of the blessings of being able to have your own garden. And that's one of the things back when we look at the Appalachia recipes and what people did for years and years. I mean, that's what they did. They just walked down to the garden, they grabbed what they had and cooked it up. And that's what we're doing right now. So let's finish up this squash. Now these are a little bit bigger than maybe bite size, so let me go ahead and cut some of these in half. You know, my mama used to say, that sounds like a Forrest Gump line, but my mama used to say, it all looks the same in your belly. So, I mean, we want to make sure it cooks well, but it doesn't have to be that pretty when we're putting it together. So we got our yellow squash ready here, and next we need to get our peppers. So I put the peppers in the fridge. Peppers are one thing that if you're not careful, they don't actually do real well. Just because they kind of get soft after time. So I'm going to grab some of the peppers that I picked this morning. They probably didn't need to be put in the fridge because we're doing it so quick, but these are some of the peppers we picked this morning. Now I gotta be honest, when we look at the different vegetables that I grow, I'm not a big pepper fan. I don't know why, it's just I'm not. And you know, it is what it is. That's one of the things that I just want to, you know, let you know about. But I mean, I love the taste of peppers. I love how they add to it. But when you cut up a pepper, you'll see that white part. You always want to get that white part cut off because the white part is the part that usually has a bit of a bitter taste to it. So as of right now, let me see if I can turn my knife around a little bit here. These are my peppers that I just picked this morning. And I'm just going ahead and trying to get that white off there. And then after you're done with that, you can just go ahead and slice them up. And again, we're kind of doing this in a bite-sized portion. So, and in this side here, you can see I just got to get the one part here cut out, and then we can cut it up. But that's the easiest way I found to cut peppers. Just cut the top, cut the bottom, and then pull out the middle, and it seems to work pretty well. So we'll take the next pepper here, we'll cut off the top again, cut off the bottom. This one's a little bit short, so we'll see how this works. But I normally go ahead and just cut it in half, pull it apart. This has a lot of white, so this probably isn't as good of a pepper for what we're doing here, but I can easily pull the white part out. And again, like I said, what I found as I'm cooking peppers up, and maybe your experience is different, and I'd love to hear that experience if you don't mind putting in your comments below. But a lot of times it's that white part that makes it a little bit bitter. So you can see what I just did. I just pulled the peppers, I pulled the white part out, and these peppers are ready to go. And these are really crisp. And again, that's a big difference. I don't go for store-bought peppers because well, I won't go into all the details about that. Who knows where they're from, and a lot of times the way that they are, they choose the type of pepper that is made that it can have a really long shelf life. These peppers that I grow, they don't have a long shelf life. If I bring them in here today, and by tomorrow, or even not tomorrow, but pretty soon after that, they start to get soft. They just don't last, because that's what a natural pepper does. But these store-bought peppers, I don't know what they do to them. I don't know how they're made, but they seem to last forever. So I don't know what they're doing to your body. But I try to stay away from that. I try to keep it as organic and natural as possible. So again, pull the seeds out and cut those peppers up. These smell, I hate, you can't smell them, but these smell great for being a pepper, a sweet pepper. So we got that taken care of. Let me just mix this up a little bit. So we got the yellow squash cut up, we got the peppers ready to go. The next thing are the onions. So I'm gonna grab one sweet onion. And we're gonna get this one ready to go. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about what they do to keep the onion from causing tears and things like that, but I've found pretty much for sweet onions, I don't really have an issue with it. Just gonna peel off the skin. That's all taken care of. Bring that over. And so what I'm gonna do now is just cut this onion so that it's ready to go. There's different ways to cut the onion. What I normally do is I'll cut a flat spot just to keep it flat. And I guess go ahead and actually, I like some that are ringed. So I'm gonna put a couple in here that are ringed so you can have a little bit of variety. But then at the same time, I usually cut this onion in half. And once it's cut in half, the rest of it I'm gonna cut the other way. So you'll see how that works. And this is I can smell this onion. It's a really, really good onion. And as we put them in here, I kind of just break it up. I mean, your onion cutting may be better than mine, but that's what I do just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And I don't like them real small. I like them to be a little bit bigger. So I'm mixing them up here, but you can see maybe some of the ones that I've done, maybe it might be a little bit larger than what you would do yourself. I mean, definitely don't dice them or anything like that. So let's go ahead and cut this one. And again, I just kind of pick it apart. Yeah, that's a really good smelling onion. This is going to be a really, really good mix. For my vegetables, I got my peppers, I got my squash, I got my onions. I'm mixing that all up. So the last vegetable that I like to add are green beans. And so here we have our squash and pepper onion mix. And I'm going to grab the green beans. These green beans are not fresh from this year. I froze them from last year, but I pulled them out of the freezer, and I'm going to add these on. So let me go ahead and just bring them in. And again, like I always mention, when it comes to Appalachia, I mean, there's no set recipe. You pretty much just made whatever you had available to yourself. So right now I got my green beans, I got my potatoes, I got my onions, I got my peppers, and I got my sausage. And so pretty much that's what we're going to add on. So let me check the potatoes and we'll see if we can add the rest of the vegetables in. So we're over here at the stove now and we have the vegetables ready that we prepared just a moment ago. So what I'm going to do is just pull out the potatoes and just do a quick check to see if they're tender yet, so I can go ahead and add the rest of the vegetables. And I mean, look at them here, they look pretty good, but potatoes take longer to cook just because of what they are. So I just want to make sure they're all ready to go before I add the rest of the vegetables into what we're cooking. So all I do here, I just take a fork and stab them. As I'm checking them here, most of them feel pretty good. There's a few I probably should have cut a little bit smaller, but they're good to go. So let me go ahead and I'm going to add the vegetables that we just prepared in here. Now this is kind of overfilling the bowl right now. Now to put the vegetables in, you'll see it really fills it up. But as I let it cook here, I'm going to put a little bit more oil on it. As I let it cook here, you're going to see the vegetables are shrinking down. It's going to make room for our sausage that we're going to be adding later. So let me just mix this a little bit around. Make sure everything's good to go. So right now we have our potatoes that we pre-cooked. Let's give them about 15 minutes just to get them or 10-15 minutes just to make sure they're ready to go. During that time, I took my squash, my yellow squash, my green beans, my onions, my peppers, cut everything up, put it all together here, and I'm going to put it back in the oven, and we'll keep an eye on it. The sausage is ready to go also, so as soon as this cooks up a little bit, we'll put our sausage in. So it's looking good. Can't wait. So I'll see you in about 15-20 minutes. I'll come back in, check it, make sure that it's cooking well, and we'll continue from there. So it's been roasting for a little while here, and I just want to go ahead and pull it out and mix it up a little bit. And it's going to cook pretty evenly with all this in here, but I just want to give it a quick mix and see if I can just make sure everything's cooking the same. But like I said earlier, we made sure everything we cut up is the same size, so it should cook up pretty evenly. It's just going to take some time. And of course, we gave the potatoes a little bit head start because potatoes normally take longer to cook, but I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. Smells good. I can smell those peppers roasting, and I think it's going to be pretty good. So let me put it back in, and after we get the veggies done the way we want them to be, then we'll add the sausage. So I just pulled the dish out of the oven, and you can see what it looks like. I mean, it looks really, really good. I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to mix it a little bit more. And we haven't put the sausage on yet, but you can see the onions, the squash, the green beans. It's just not only is it going to taste good, it actually looks good. So let's take a quick look and see how the vegetables are cooking. And if they're ready to go, we'll put the sausage on. Now looking at this is really cooking extremely well. So let me mix it up a little bit. Now everything looks like it's ready to go. I feel like inviting everybody over for dinner. So let me grab the sausage. And the sausage is ready to go, so what I'm going to do now is just kind of mix it in. This is pre-cooked, so it's not like I have to cook the sausage, so I just need to warm it up. So if I would have made this dish with uncooked sausage, raw, you have to cook it, I would have done it a different way. But this sausage is pre-cooked, and so let me just put it on top there. So I'm going to leave the sausage on top because I kind of want it to brown a little bit, and I haven't added my spices yet. And normally what I do is I add thyme and black pepper and garlic salt. It's really much up to what you like. So I'm just going to add a little bit of spices in here. Depending, again, it varies depending on what you like. I do like to have a little bit of a pepper on here. So I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. And I have thyme, and so I'm going to add some thyme here on the top. So it looks pretty good to me. It smells good. So what I'm going to do now is just bring the camera over so you can get a close-up, and we'll let it cook, finish up, and as soon as the sausage is cooked and browned a little bit, it'll be ready to eat. So we're back in the kitchen, and I have to tell you, it smells absolutely amazing. Now I am going to use my temperature tester here to check the temperature of the different food, especially the sausage. Now the sausage is completely pre-cooked, so it's not a big deal, but I do want to check it just to make sure. So I don't know if you can see what that looks like. It looks absolutely amazing, and it smells amazing. And like I said earlier, I wish I could invite everybody here to enjoy it with me. So let me just take a quick temperature test. Yeah, everything is above the temperature, much above. So everything is cooked where it needs to be. So we're done. We're done with cooking. And so now is the time to enjoy it. It just looks absolutely amazing. The whole house smells absolutely amazing. So I'm gonna grab a little bit here and try it. But the combination of the sausage and then all the vegetables, I mean, it does take a little bit of time because you have to make the potatoes first because you want to make sure they're fully cooked. Add the rest of the vegetables and then add the sausage. So let's take a quick bite. Here's the potato, and I mean, this thing is like super soft. And I apologize, I gotta blow on this because this is really, really hot. I mean, that is really good, just with a little bit of garlic pepper, with the thyme, with a little bit of black pepper. That's all I put on it. I didn't put anything else on it. And at least what I like, this is perfect. Everything is cooked to perfection. And again, I say that not because of anything I did. All I'm doing is duplicating recipes that have been around for over 200 years. So I hope you enjoyed this video of the roasted sausage and vegetables. Again, in Appalachia, I could give you a recipe and say you need this, 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 this. That's just not the way it works. So it just depends on what's available. So, and there's nothing fresher than walking down to the garden and just grabbing what you need and then bringing it up to the kitchen and cooking it. And that's what we did today with our garden to grub recipe here. And so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're able to experience the same where you live. And if you like this video, please click to like it and also subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you. And thanks for joining me, and it's time to eat. Enjoy.